I went to the open drug market to raise the awareness of the reality and take pictures like this and take video like this. And so, because when I first saw the market, I said, this is wrong. Like, this is horrible. Like, how could this be the way that people are buying their medications? It doesn't make sense. And so I went there with a camera crew and, we went there to, afterwards he was like, you know what, my kids are in the US and they don't want to come back. And he's like, welcome back, my daughter. And I'm like, wow. And people were buying it. They were like reaching out to me. On my phone was constantly blowing up. I'm like, oh my God, this is something people will buy online. That's awesome. And Fantastic. So if in 50 years, they're like, wow, Vivian built the largest institution of affordable healthcare, pharmaceutical products, or, supply chain platforms or whatever, they end up saying, and then that is what I came here to do. And that's what I would be happy for people to recognize me for.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Finding African Unicorns podcast of myself, Kwaku. On this podcast, what I do is I sit down with amazing founders from some of the most promising startups on the African continent, and we talk about a bunch of things. We talk about the journey and the path that they've had to follow to get to this point. We get into a bit of the learnings that they've picked up along the way, some of them truly harsh lessons. And we also get a sneak peek into some of the things that they're doing to really elevate the status of their companies into true champions coming out of Africa. Now, if you like the content on this podcast and you like to listen to some more, watch some more videos, go ahead and subscribe, like the videos, and share with friends who you think might find this inspiring, some of whom probably are on the same unicorn journey. Also, you can subscribe to the content on this podcast via your favorite platforms. And here I'm referring to 1, Google Podcast, 2, Apple Podcast, and obviously 3, Spotify. And so in today's episode, we're going to be welcoming Vivian Nwakah as guest to the Finding African Unicorns podcast. She's the founder and CEO of Medsaf. And here's a story of how she's building the Amazon of pharmaceutical products in Nigeria, and how she and her team are looking to expand operations across other emerging markets. It's an interesting conversation with lots of insights. I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. Just to recap, right? There are 4 themes that, Vivian wanted to explore with you today. The first theme is really around purpose and impact, right? So your upbringing, your experience before Medsaf, and how that sort of prepared you to do what you're doing now. The second topic is on resilience and perseverance. And here specifically would love to explore, the challenges you face. And first of all, relocating to Nigeria, which in itself I'm sure is a big deal. And secondly, getting Medsaf off the ground. The third theme is disruption. So we just really want to understand a bit about the Medsaf model, what you're doing to drive affordability, quality, and accessibility, right? And then lastly, we'll talk a little bit about people, because I think I read you mentioned somewhere, HR is one of your biggest challenges. I think it'd be great to just explore that, right, in a bit more detail. So those are the four topics and themes for today. So very exciting. Let's delve in. I think to kick it off, I was doing quite a bit of research about you before the interview, and I mean you've done a lot even before Medsaf, right? You've worked in Wells Fargo. You went into politics. You've done a whole bunch of things, and one of those people who sometimes feel like in life, everything that you go through sort of really adds up to some ultimate sort of path, right? So I think maybe to start, it would be great if you can just, take us and the audience through a bit of your journey before Medsaf, and maybe shed a bit of light around how this prepared you for what you're doing now.
Yeah, no, definitely. So, I mean, I am in the constant state of learning. So like when I was little, you could find me at a family party and I would be in the corner because we had just gone to the library and I'd have a stack of like 10 books that I wanted to get through, and I would stay up all night just reading, and I was constantly reading or, just kind of having these experiences where I could just learn more. And so that, I think, has kind of colored my entire career. It's colored everything that I've ever done. Is just this desire to do things with my hands, learn as much as I can, and try. So I've worked since I was 14 years old, working in retail, working in coffee as a barista. I've worked at Zales, I've worked at Pearl Vision, and those were all like really early experiences when I was in high school and college that showed me, just how to really understand so many different types of people, and to match them with what would work best for them. I was in, my first real career was in the mortgage industry. And I did think that that was where I would stay, because it was such a high paying job, and really rewarding. I was really helping people within my territory learn how to use their mortgages to, wipe out their debt, or, upgrade their homes. And I was, getting to really hear the real life stories about what people were going to do with either their new home or the refinance of this property, this value of the home. And I became really disillusioned during the financial crash of 2008, and seeing all these people who, I had had such great relationships with in the community. And I was doing, trainings on how to just kind of like, work through the system. All of a sudden the system just crashes, and that like the American dream has crashed. And so from there, I just knew that in that moment I needed to look out for myself and figure out how to level up, but I wanted to create impact. And so that's how you see me get to be able to start out as a person that was volunteering to pass out flyers for a political campaign. Then I actually became the campaign manager. And, we were able to get, we were able to work with the DNC. So I got exposed to that. I got exposed to AFSCME and the Chicago Teachers Unions, and being able to raise money from them, being able to raise money from the community, working with street teams, which is really interesting stories that I have, from that experience. But that's just an example of me, volunteering, just being curious about how something works. And then I kind of, see an opportunity to make it better. And I was able to constantly surprise myself on all the things I was able to achieve that I never thought I would achieve. I also helped start home healthcare agencies. And so that was my really introduction to healthcare and the intricacies of working in the United States healthcare system, working through the regulations and all of the documentation and legal processes of running a healthcare business. I was exposed to all of that. So, I think if I just kind of really just sum up like my journey, it was just one of, opportunities, being able to kind of see opportunities, create opportunities out of nothing, and be able to really add value. And that has really just been what I think I've done almost my whole life, definitely. So, and somehow I ended up in Nigeria trying to do this on a much, much bigger scale. And that's where Medsaf comes in.
How did you? I just picked up something interesting. It's political season in Nigeria now with the elections coming up. How did you end up moving from banking to leading a political campaign in the U.S. in Chicago? How did that jump happen? Yeah.
Actually, so one of my friends from college, he and I had kept in touch. And we were talking, I think we were talking about mortgages because he's a lawyer, and he was working for the U.S. government at that time, if I remember correctly. But I remember we just were keeping in touch somehow. And then he was talking about running for this campaign. And, he would always just complain because he would, had hired this really expensive, fancy law firm in Chicago to help him run the campaign. And I was just looking at it. I was like, these guys are ripping you off. Like, let's go down to the people. Let's find out what
let's go grassroots.
Like let's do things in the community. Yeah, like we did so many beautiful things for the South Side of Chicago. basically, these really interesting areas close to the south suburbs of Chicago, but also still in Chicago. And, we were able to do a lot. And that was kind of like my refocus for him, was like, let's figure out how we could put on a series of events that are just actually bringing value to the community, because that's what I was doing, or that's what I had done at Wells Fargo. That's kind of how I differentiated myself in that career, was doing community events and trainings. And we even did one that I used to do, which was like financial literacy, but he's Nigerian. So the interesting thing is that by running his campaign, he's Nigerian American. My other idea was to let's get all these Nigerians in the diaspora. Let's get these guys to also, give money for your campaign. And so I was at these meetings, these association meetings, with the elderly, elders, and I'd have to pitch that, hey, you get a chance to, be part of, shaping Chicago, shaping, legislation for Chicago, or just kind of being more involved. But the interesting thing about that experience is that these guys were just interested in talking about Nigerian politics. So we would go in and there would be they would speak for like 3 hours about Nigerian politics.
Wow. And not about elections in Chicago. No. Nigerian politics, amazing.
No, exactly. And some of them hadn't been back for like 10, 15, 20 years. So it's like, They're still like just sitting there talking about Nigerian politics. So I think the diaspora is powerful. And so we wanted to work with the diaspora to realize that, especially in a Nigerian American context, that you can actually be a leader and rally behind your people so that you can have a voice. And so that was the original career. And definitely, I never thought I would also have anything to do with Nigeria, but that was actually the in that got me interested about Nigeria. It was kind of, sitting with all these old men and listening to their stories and listening to them complaining about, things happening in Nigeria. That's actually part of this journey. So, you mentioned, all these things kind of interconnected, and none of this, I couldn't have gotten here without that, because otherwise, who else would have been talking about Nigeria? So it's really interesting but you're right. Like every single step I've taken is really kind of interwoven into the next step.
Fantastic. Did you win, by the way?
So we went up against a daily incumbent. So we lost by 50 votes.
Oh, wow.
And so we were unknown. We were the first time runners. Like there were some really interesting characters in that race that had run multiple times. And if you know anything about Chicago history or politics, Daley is like an institution. Like those guys had been in power for a long time. So you don't really go up against the institution, but we did, and we almost won.
I mean, 50 votes. I mean, that's very slim.
It was really slim and potentially even fraudulent. Potentially we did win. Who knows? Because you have to go around and get these physical signatures, right? So it's all about, physical signatures to get onto the ballot, and then, physical counting to decide if you won or not. So, it was a very slim that what they showed us. So I don't actually know. But it was devastating to me at the time, but I learned so much from that I then took to the next things that I did, and the next and the next. And even parts of Medsaf are, there's two things that I think I took from the political campaign that helped me start Medsaf. One is that, I was able to get all of these people from all over the city, a lot from even the suburbs. People would drive to our office on the south side of Chicago and go out and knock on doors.
Wow.
And I was able,
for free?
And this is for free.
Did you pay, or was
right?
it for free?
So yeah, no, it's for free. So we were able to inspire, I was able to inspire people to get involved and be interested in something that had nothing to do with them, really. And so, definitely, when I started Medsaf with a slogan: quality medication is a fundamental human right. And that is, something that everybody can get behind. And even if it doesn't necessarily physically impact them, they can rally behind this call. And a lot of early days of Medsaf was about just bringing people together that, just wanted to be part of, this movement that we were building, that is quality medication is a fundamental human right. And so I learned the power of, building movements from the political campaign, as well as counting the votes. The DNC came in, they brought all their specialists from all over the, their operatives from all over the country to come and help us. And, it was really just kind of learning the mathematical analysis behind, how you can be sure that something's going to come, the probabilities of things, and how to, improve probabilities of people's behaviors.
Got it.
How to, think about, counting the votes, and so that is definitely something I think I do it every day at Medsaf.
Got it.
I do it every day with my, in some way, shape, or form, is this concept of, being able to have high levels of probability that people will do what you want them to do. And so those are two key things I learned from there.
So basically, you started out in banking, left and went to do something totally unrelated in politics and helping someone with his campaign. And then, interestingly, you built out a bunch of things, right? You found a love for Nigeria. You built like a whole bunch of things around how to mobilize people. You then sort of also was doing something in healthcare, and eventually you came to Nigeria. I mean, it's such an interesting journey. Well, I guess for me, the other question I have for you before we now sort of switch gears and talk about Medsaf, you coming to Nigeria and sort of founding Medsaf is, when I was doing a bit of research about you, there's one word that kept on coming up, right? And that word was impact. And I realized as you were speaking, you mentioned it a couple of times, right? Like, how do you define impact for yourself, right? And so let's say in 50 years time, if they write an obituary about Vivian, right? Like, what would you love for them to say?
So I came to Nigeria to build institutions, right? I fashioned myself against, the entrepreneurs of, the 1800s in the United States. I was coming here to build foundations and institutions that bring sustainable solutions to the hardest problems. And that was literally, what I was thinking in my mind, when I came to Nigeria. That was the intention. Because, I had, by the time I got to Nigeria, I had traveled all over the world. I had backpacked. I had, seen, life, and had these life experiences and heard, a lot about Nigeria and the problems. And so I came to see, okay, well, if we can take, the best of what's happening in the U.S. or in China or Brazil, and, some of these places I had been, and we could actually build good solutions, maybe we can solve these problems and create a good story around Nigerians, a good story around a story of success around Africans. And that literally was my thought process when I landed in the country. I had just come from business school, so I kind of thought I was going to take over the world. But, the goal was, the impact was the impact of building solid and sustainable institutions that solve deep problems. That was what I came here to do. And Fantastic. So if in 50 years, they're like, wow, Vivian built the largest institution of affordable healthcare, pharmaceutical products, or, supply chain platforms or whatever, they end up saying, and then that is what I came here to do. And that's what I would be happy for people to recognize me for 100 years from now.
Fantastic. So really building sort of sustainable institutions that drive impact on the continent. That's fantastic. How was it before you could do this? You had to come to Nigeria, right? So I guess sometime 2013, 2014, you said, "Hey, I'm gonna leave, whatever I was in the US. I'm going to pack my bags, come to Nigeria. Probably was your first time, right? In Nigeria?
It was my first. I'd never been to Nigeria. I'll never forget when I landed at the airport. But that was my first time.
and Vivian, the interest that leads me to my question, right? Like, I happen to, and I was telling you this before we started, I also happened to sort of come to Nigeria, just around the same time. And, it was a shock for me, like it was very challenging, first of all, to get family and friends to, be comfortable with me coming to Nigeria, because obviously I'd watched all of these movies about Nigeria, etc., right? And then you land in the airport and like, it's a different vibe and it's a different energy, and, it takes some getting used to, right? And then once you sort of get used to it, you actually find there's a lot of interesting things about Nigeria and a lot of exciting things in Nigeria. I guess my question to you is, when you came in 2013, proper JJC, right? Bright-eyed, bushy-tailed. How was that process? How was the process like, of adopting? What are the challenges in the initial days? What are some of the things that took you by surprise? Can you share a little bit of that?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I want to acknowledge like my privilege. Like, I know that, some of the things that I'm going to say are not necessarily normal for the average person. And so I'm acknowledging that, right? Like that it's not that anybody can just kind of come up, have, a lot of money in the bank on their own and come to this country and then be able to kind of like flitz around and figure it out like I did. Like, I get that. And I think that there are so many different ways that people can do this, right? And I think the easiest way is obviously coming into the country with a company. So I just want to say it that way. But, yeah, I mean, I, had this internship I was supposed to do for 3 months and to complete my business program. And I chose Nigeria to kind of see what the opportunities were for me, not only to finish that program, but also, could this be a place that I could do something big, build a business, and that is attacking, any one of these really hard problems. And, I had an uncle that I grew up with that came to Nigeria a long time ago and was like the head of Motorola at some point.
Wow.
So he, I stayed with him and his family. They lived part-time. And then I had gotten connected with another uncle who helped build one of the earliest cable television companies in the country. So I kind of had this really soft landing with my uncle, though there was a whole plan on how to kick me out of the country and get me back to Chicago for sure, from my parents and everybody. So everyone was just like, Vivian is too strong to just like tell her no. Yeah. But we're going to figure out how to make this so that this girl goes home in December.
That's right.
And I think that was the original plan for my family. So trust me, nobody was celebrating. Nobody was saying that this is something like, nobody was like, okay, this is, yeah, she's doing a good thing and she's going to be able to figure it out. Everybody was waiting for me to get back on that plane in December of that year, 2013. So trust me. Yeah, it was really interesting. But, I got to, I had a good place to stay, which I think is like very crucial to being able to do anything and think about anything. It's just like having a good place to stay and then having like something to try, where you can try something and fail, and make mistakes. And those were all kind of crucial parts to my origin stories in this country. So I just want to be real open that, I definitely had people that I could rely on and count on when I came here, that I could trust, right? But, then them having kind of that framework. Mm-hmm. But yeah, then it was kind of like me, kind of going out and talking to as many people as I possibly could to understand what Nigeria was all about. And it was really fun. I had a lot of fun when I came here.
Initially, the plan was 3 months, right? What happened? I mean, how did it change from 3 months to, 3 years and 6 years? What happened?
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, like I said, I was looking for something, and actually I remember, so I'll tell you the story of my first night in Nigeria. I was, like, what did I get myself into? And I woke up that morning and I went to go take a shower and the power went off. And so that sound, the sound of the generator, the switchover sound,
Yep.
like the doo,
Yep.
I was just like, we're under attack, like the house is like about to explode, something.
Yep.
And so I'm covered in soap and like it's dark, like now it's dark, and I'm just like, what the hell is going on? Like I don't understand. Like I really didn't get it. Like it never happened to me before in my entire life. And then they were like, Vivian, the power just went off. It's just changing over. And I was like, oh my God. And then then I started to learn about this power issue. And I was really concerned because does it mean that then so I started to understand that, okay, NEPA comes on only for these hours. And then if you have the generator, then you put it on and it's expensive, because they would always complain. They were like, Vivian, you can't leave all the lights on and you can't leave everything plugged in because, generator's expensive. And so I was like, wait, but we're living in Parkview. So what about the people who are not living in a massive mansion? What are they doing? And I just kept thinking about my life. And, when I was at work in the US, I would drive, and for hours without thinking about anything at all, except daydreaming about what I wanted to do. And here you have a situation where power goes out and then you can't even work, you can't study, you can't, it's almost like your life is just, just halted.
Yep.
When the lights or the power go off. Yeah. And I just thought that was not fair. So that became my first goal. Was how can we fix the power situation? And so I actually, through a family friend, got connected to a former head of oil and gas. He was, large global oil and gas, and then he had left and had just retired. And so I actually pitched him. I said, why don't we start a renewable energy company? Because you've been in oil and gas this whole time. And, that's one thing. But what if we, create clean energy solutions and start with the business sector. And then as it gets bigger and bigger, we can create power solutions for all. I have no clue. I'm not an engineer. I'm not an engineer. I don't know what I was talking about, but he said yes.
Wow.
And so that became my, in to kind of say to my parents and to the world, like, look, I'm here and I am solving the energy crisis in Nigeria. So it must be on something.
I'm staying beyond 3 months, right?
And I'm staying beyond 3 months. So that's how it happened. So and he's a current investor in Medsaf, but definitely if he hadn't have said yes, then I probably would be also back in Chicago.
No, but it's an amazing story.
Yeah.
I'd always wondered, once again, when I'm doing these interviews, I try to do as much research as possible, right? So that I don't ask completely dumb questions, right? And I always wondered why would somebody who has a banking, political, campaign, medical background go into green, solar energy, right? And now it totally makes sense.
I was frustrated. I didn't think it was fair that people can, just deal with the fact that the power is going to go out for hours at a time. And that was actually my very first bad experience in Nigeria, was the power going out and me feeling like, am I dying, or are we going to die? And so I just was like, okay, I think there's a solution here. And I remember I've been everywhere. And so I had been to Germany many times, Munich. If you fly into Munich, what are you going to see? You're actually going to see solar installations on everyone's home. And here you have, Europeans being able to kind of use wind power and solar power and all of these other types of power solutions to augment what? But here in Nigeria, there's we need this kind of augmentation for this power grid solution, and everyone's just kind of left to their own devices. So that was the mentality back then, was that, hey, maybe solar technology is advanced enough to work for, at least the industrial and commercial industries in Nigeria, and that then we can move from there into a commercial, direct to consumer.
Vivian, when when I moved to Nigeria, I think probably the first 2 or 3 days, I just couldn't sleep. It's like this constant noise. I was like, what is this? What is going on?
Yeah, that noise.
But anyway, I think, I guess...
Noise pollution is that.
It is. I guess for me, as I reflect on what you just said, right, the natural thing that comes to me is here you were, you'd found like a higher calling, right, around making energy accessible and reliable in Nigeria, which, as you said, is the fair thing to do, right? How did you transition from that higher call to maybe another call which is even more higher, which is medications and saving life? How did that happen?
Yeah, so that experience got me in the door many doors. I sat at board meetings of large banks, oil and gas companies. I had so many people that I met that were high level because of my partner, because he was high level. So he was just like introducing me to all of these people, and I'm pitching them about doing projects. And, then I'm starting to understand even deeper, the high level conversations, and then also the difference between high level conversations at the top and what they want and their motives, and then the middle managers and their motives, and also just how different that was. And when you put this in the context of power or energy, and you walk into businesses and you say, I'm actually going to make you more efficient. I'm going to reduce your cost by X. I'm going to streamline your whole, operations. It was interesting how where I was receiving resistance and where I was receiving support. And so that really just helped me understand more about, how corporations in Nigeria work from a, levels of authority perspective and bureaucratic perspective, but then also the hidden levers of power. I will never forget the meeting this is our big multi-million-dollar deal, and we had all the board members, we had all the managers, we had all the CEOs, and they brought the head of facility. And he was the only one that walked into this room that had gold everywhere, like gold rings, gold necklaces, everything. He had gold everywhere. Wow. And this man was the blocker. He was the person that stopped that deal from going through. Wow. And he took me aside and said, what church do you go to? And it was just like,
what does church got to do with this?
This guy isn't interested. This guy isn't interested in talking about the business. Wow. This guy wants something from me. And that's just my first example. So like, obviously he did want something, right? But, so I was now learning the intricacies of these things. But at the same time, the Naira crashed and we were not prepared for financing. So, we didn't have the structure. The company structure was not one where we didn't have the structure or the planning around how to help these hospitals, how to help these companies actually get access to financing. And there was a difference in the mindset. We were selling 14-year projects that would pay off in 14 years at the time, maybe even longer. And they were looking at 2-year timeframes, and 5-year timeframes. And then as the Naira is crashing, they're getting more and more short term around what they're going to invest in, right? And so that was just the learning lesson. It didn't work at that time without financing because, the decision makers just really couldn't justify that 14 years, so it just became harder and harder to get projects closed. And then as the Naira was crashing, the decision was just like, maybe this is not the right thing to do now. Also at the time, a lot of resistance from some of the government projects that we were looking at too. So it just didn't work. It didn't work at that time. I hopped onto another project with one of the vendors that we were working with. I'm still in the energy space, so I'm still kind of in the energy space. But then I was just thinking, okay, well, this isn't going to work. I'm not the right person for it, and this isn't going to work. So how am I going to create the impact, right? And so earlier on, in my early days, in that first, year of being in Nigeria, a friend of mine, who was one of the first people to ever take me out, right? So, I was in Nigeria, and I had all these people, that I would reach out to that would take me out and show me, this world. And I had so much fun. And he was one of those guys, I was friends with his brother in Atlanta. And, so he would come pick me up, and then he was the first person to take me to SIP, if you remember SIP.
Yep, I do.
He was the first person to really to introduce me to that Lagos nightlife. And I was like, wow, and then I remember him saying he felt ill. I do remember him saying that he felt ill or something, and then he died.
Wow.
And then when his brothers were kind of relaying the story to me about a malaria pill, taking a fake malaria pill, and how he died, it was so physically shocking, to me, and I just remember feeling a sense of sad. Obviously, I was very sad, but also physical shame, like just being fully ashamed that had happened to him. Ashamed because, it's a shock to me, but people here are used to it. They're used to it, according to his family at the time. And then talking to more and more people about it who would say this, my friend or my dad or like my cousin. And I kept hearing these stories over and over again. I would complain about it over and over again. I would hear the same thing, and that just, I felt a sense of shame that, I grew up in a place where I would never, ever I would never think about that at that time. I don't know about the United States today, but back when I was growing up, that was never something that I would ever question, ever, and so I was just curious about it. So while I was working still in power, I was just curious. I wasn't thinking that I could actually do Medsaf. That wasn't the first thought. The first thought was, okay, well, I wonder what people are doing, right? And so I was just researching. I was calling manufacturers to understand what do they do? Because of course, I was a bit naive, and I said to myself, oh, well, maybe Nigeria just doesn't have access to Pfizer or Merck or Sanofi. They just don't have them. Must be they don't have access. So let me call them. And I would talk to people, and then the stories about being burned, lack of transparency, lack of trust. The themes of those stories just continue to pop up. And I was like, wow, so even if they wanted to invest in Nigeria, they already have a long list of reasons why they don't want to, or if they do want to, they would only do it with, limited exposure. And so I was just learning about that. Same thing and then I was learning about that. I saw that as an opportunity. And so that kind of spurred me on to continue to talk about it with hospitals and pharmacies and people who were pharmacists, and just trying to kind of understand what the pain points were. And so those earlier days, was really just was focused on figuring out what the problems were. And then once I realized that technology could be a solution here to fixing this problem, that's when, I figured out, okay, well, what could my entry point be, not being a pharmacist? Well, maybe I'll focus on vitamins and supplements. So let me test this out. And so I built a website in 2000. This is 2015. So 2015, I built a website called vitamins.ng. And, I did it all by myself. And I put, I bought vitamins and supplements. And then I started doing Facebook marketing. And people were buying, they were buying it. They were like reaching out to me on my phone was constantly blowing up. I'm like, oh my God, this is something people will buy online. That's awesome. They will buy vitamins. So remember, I had built a Facebook page. I had built a website and a Facebook page, and I was doing online marketing. And so I, price. So when you look at some of the things I was selling, the price was really good. I was plugging in logistics companies. So I was testing out all the early parts of Medsaf, plugged in the logistics companies, and, payments solutions, weren't really available then. They were just making transfers, but, it was just the ease of it. And I was actually also doing education around the different vitamins as well. Like I was doing that to test it out. And so that I never really talk about that, but that is actually something that we did in 2000. Wow. I did in 2015 by myself to kind of test the market and see like, okay, will people use tech? Will people purchase from you online? Does that work? And it worked. And so then that's kind of pushed me to formalize the team, kind of really think about where the focus could be, and identify this vision, which would end up becoming Medsaf. So that's the journey.
It's Vivian, it's an amazing journey. As I'm listening to you, there are a lot of interesting threads that are coming out, right? There's a thread around, you were thinking about the idea, right? Well, whilst you're working on your power company, and you're sort of testing it and doing the research over a period of time before you actually now started to test it out and see if it's going to. So I thought that was quite interesting as well. And then obviously the very moving story about your friend, which, like you rightly said, I think all of us, you look around and you always find, family members who've gone through this, right? And it's just absolutely gut-wrenching. Maybe I guess that tees me up to my next question. So, can you give an overview for the benefit of the audience, right? Can you give an overview of Medsaf, right? And what are you guys doing to sort of, I don't know whether to call it disrupt, I don't know whether it's called transformation, but what are you doing to disrupt the pharma industry in Nigeria?
Yeah. So Medsaf is an end-to-end pharmaceutical technology platform to increase access, affordability, and quality of medications in emerging markets. So we're really about building the technology to reduce the friction of all of these various healthcare stakeholders to work together. And we've started out as really building a true marketplace where we're making it easier for hospitals to purchase, manage, track, and finance their medications and have it delivered to them within 24 to 48 hours. And on the other side, vetting quality suppliers and manufacturers to make sure that their products are readily available to the public. And so that is the first piece of what Medsaf is. But the second layer of that is really about extracting the information from the needs of the market to help manufacturers, governments, NGOs, and all other stakeholders kind of increase their offerings to our markets that we operate in. And so that is the vision, and really just how we do that or how we execute that is what we've been working on since 2017.
And I guess the customer in this case is not the end user, right? Like myself, yourself. I guess the customer is the pharmacies, the hospitals who would sort of come to you and sort of get drugs from you, right? Is that correct?
Through the Medsaf platform, yes.
Okay.
So yes, right now we focus on hospitals, pharmacies, corporations, NGOs. They can all purchase medications for their healthcare facilities and get access to financing and have it delivered to them within 24 to 48 hours. And then there are software that we build to make it easier for these healthcare stakeholders to actually, understand what their demand is, understand what their need is in real time, so that they always have access to the medications that they need.
How many customers do you have? And can you give a sense, maybe range, how it's growing?
So we've worked with over 700, since then we worked with over 700 healthcare stakeholders, including patients, corporations, and pharmacies, but mostly hospitals. We've shipped across 22 states. We have hubs in 3 states in Nigeria now. And, we're really kind of doubling down on Nigeria expansion for the upcoming year. And then the goal is to then move into other markets that also suffer from the same similar issues.
Vivian, on a scale of 1 to 10, right? 1 being very easy and 10 being very difficult. How hard is it to build and manage what you're doing now with Medsaf?
Well, today it's much easier, but when we started, there were a couple of different factors that the people who are in the industry now don't have the hurdle of overcoming. And so if you'd asked me the question maybe in 2018, I would have said 10. If you ask me the question now, we work with all of the largest and best hospitals and doctors in the country now. We have a brand, and people understand and know Medsaf, and those we have many customers who've been with us since 2017 and 2018, and they've seen a constant, analyzing of what we're offering and improving, on what we're offering over and over and over again. So today we are trying to deal with our pipeline. That's why, I told you what I was doing earlier today. We're trying to deal with our pipeline, whereas when we first started, we actually had to change minds, change behaviors. A lot of the hospitals that we spoke to were actually going to the open drug market to purchase medications.
Wow.
And so because it was easy to go there, you physically go there, you pick up the medication, you look at it, you can ask the cost, you can look someone in the eye and say, can I trust you? Right? Which was key. They were physically going there. They were physically spending, billions, as groups, going there to purchase medications. And technology is really non-existent. We were going to hospitals, they're using paper. We go to manufacturers. We went into some of the local manufacturers, and we saw nothing but paper. No systems, or in majority of the places that we went to in the early days, right? So you have not tech, and then also the suppliers are non-tech. Like you can't even get an invoice like a digitized invoice like that. That was almost we never ran into it. It was a written piece of paper always, so in those early days, it was really about making the market. And of course, I didn't understand that fully until now. Looking back, I realized we had to be evangelists for technology adaptation and changing behaviors about how to think about purchasing medications for your patients. And that work was extremely excruciatingly hard.
How was it like getting your first, on the customer side, your first hospital or pharmacy, right? And then conversely on the supply side, your first manufacturer. How was that experience like back in the day, right? When all of these things were paper and you're just some new person on the block trying to sort of talk about this digital platform. How was it like?
Yeah, I mean, what Medsaf's vision hasn't changed that much, So I was going in there pitching the vision. So what's changed is just the possibility of this vision, right? And so they were just looking at me like, whoa, I don't know, but the hospitals really, the owners really loved us, and I think that they really supported us. The manufacturers, the high level people within those manufacturers, they loved us, and so, because we were one of the first people to go there and say, hey, this is what we're trying to do. So we got so much love and support from the healthcare industry when we first started, and still do. I think that, the question was, can we actually do it? And I think that now today it's so interesting to kind of go back and because, I'm sure that, people just kind of believed in me, as a person. And so it's now shifted into believe in the possibilities because you see it happening around you. And so, yeah, it was really special early days talking to people because those that understood, remember we're dealing with a lot of doctors here. They're highly educated. We're dealing with owners of manufacturing companies, local and global. They're highly educated people. They know that what I was selling as the future was the right way to go, but they're overburdened by the reality of what's actually happening, which is that everybody else, all these other stakeholders, make it really easy just to kind of like just put your hands up and just say, I'm going to do what I have to, I'm just going to deal with what I've got, because it's messy. It was very, very, very messy. When we started this company and just the state of what we saw.
And Vivian, maybe just to piggyback on that, right? I mean, I picked this picture from the internet, right? And this is like an open market somewhere in Indonesia. Is this like what you had to confront? Like when you see this picture, what sort of emotions and what sort of thinking?
So I'll tell you a funny story for your audience. It's not so funny, but it was just, this is what I had to do. So I actually got arrested in the open drug market. Yeah. So I got arrested because I went to the open drug market to raise the awareness of the reality and take pictures like this and take video like this. And so, because when I first saw the market, I said, this is wrong. Like, this is horrible. Like, how could this be the way that people are buying their medications? It doesn't make sense. And so I went there with a camera crew, and we went there to
in the spirit of your Chicago political days. We went there with a camera.
Yes, I went there with a camera crew, and went to look around, and I was like, "Wow, this is what is this?" And I didn't understand it at first, but we got arrested by the people. All of a sudden, there were like these people that just like surrounded us. And they took us, then said we were going to be put on trial. So we had to then go, we went to different places. We were kind of led through the market and then ended up in front of this really old man who said that he was the leader of the market. And, he put us on trial and people testified against us. They said that we were reporters and that we were, we were doing something bad. And I just kind of gave him, and it was my turn to speak, and I just kind of gave a speech about how I had come back to Nigeria to do something really good for Nigerians, and I was trying to help, and I don't know, I know that was the thought process around what I was saying, and I didn't know what was going to happen to us, and my team was scared, we didn't know if they were going to hurt us or what, but he actually. Afterwards, he was like, you know what, my kids are in the U.S. and they don't want to come back. And he's like, welcome back, my daughter. And I'm like, wow. This guy's he's going to let me go. And he just said, we just don't want you to mess up what we have here. And so I looked at it through a negative lens back then. But now that I've actually been in the market, I understand exactly what these guys have done. They are dealing in the best way that they can and creating a situation for the best way that they can to overcome all these problems, right? Because what better way to make sure that people get access to anything than to congregate in one place together in a market, right? And so they're dealing with the same things. They're using their groups to purchase in bulk, aggregation, to get better pricing so they can have affordable medications. They're dealing with, they're putting themselves together so that they can provide and make sure that people have what they need. And, they even have associations. So that was the leader of the association, I think, or someone. leader of the market. I don't know, so they're trying the best that they can, right? But they're doing it on feature phones and paper, right? And so what I was realizing at that time, especially having been, connected to the tech ecosystem and being able to see what was happening, from a tech perspective in Nigeria at the time, I could see the vision, which is that, hey, you guys, we can actually put all of this online. We can use technology to bring you guys all together. And using technology, we could then, bring forward good players and get rid of bad players and reinforce that positive behavior around purchasing of medications. And that we can then insert quality control in a way that is just really hard for you to do here in this market. And so that's also like the evolution of my thought process, and even the lenses that I look at Nigeria with is, sometimes you just see this big mess and you're like, this is really nasty. But then you realize, okay, this is what people are having to do because of all of these problems that have not been solved from a macro perspective. So that is, I've definitely been to the market, and most of my customers were going there when we first started. And what Medsaf is building is a solution to the market.
Vivian, I mean, this is super inspirational. I think as I think about your business, right? And this is why I was asking you how difficult it is, right? It feels like it's an extremely difficult business, not because the problem itself is difficult, but because there are many multiple parts of the problem which are broken, right? And sort of like this marketplace piece is one piece which was like really broken before you started, right? So I think it's an amazing story. How I read somewhere that you had delivered drugs to one of your customers in northern Nigeria in less than 24 hours, right? And I was just wondering, how is that even possible?
Yeah.
Like, even I can get to northern Nigeria, as an individual in 24 hours. Like, how do you get like a whole? How'd you do that?
Well, so from the very beginning of Medsaf, we've been using data to analyze our purchases, understand, what do we need to have what does the supplier need to have on hand? Where do they need to go and get it? We have 7 various layers of redundancy for medications that we provide. And then what do our customers need? And so, if I'm thinking about the same customer, one of our largest customers in the northern region, we are constantly aggregating their needs in advance and then being able to kind of ship on demand. And we use planes, so we air freight medications many times. And many times that's also how we get it in as well. But yeah, no, definitely. This all becomes much easier when you have technology in place to analyze, aggregate, and put people put things in the right place, right? And so that's what we're building, not only internally for ourselves as a supplier, but for other suppliers who will then use the system and be able to do better at their job. And same thing goes for the other side of the marketplace, which is the hospitals and other healthcare providers. They can then use the information that we're providing to then do better at procurement of medications that they need. And that is at the core of what we're...
What does the next steps sort of look like for Medsaf, right? Even as we are wrapping up the conversation, is it more around, hey, there's a lot to innovate around, right? So we're going to sort of continue to innovate and bring new products to the market? Or is it more around, hey, we figured this out, we started in 2014, a lot of things didn't exist, we have it in place, want to expand in Nigeria, want to take it and replicate it in other markets, right? How are you thinking about things going forward?
So like, remember I said, I want to build a sustainable institutions, and the product that we're building, or what Medsaf is building as a company, works, and it was always designed to work at scale. So we need to enter new markets. We need to be exposed to different languages and different ways that these countries actually operate from the pharmaceutical perspective, and test those out. Make sure that our platform works in additional markets as well. And the goal is for this company to be a Pan-African company and an emerging market company. So we're not stopping at, the continent of Africa. This is the same issue also exists in different expressions in South America, Central America, and Asia, and also the U.S. actually. If you've been paying attention to the issues with the COVID-19 vaccine rollout, as well as the consumables around COVID-19, it's the same issue, right? Where are these products located? Are they safe, and are they cost effective? Those are the three things that we're tackling, and we built it from inception to be something that can work in many, many different environments. And so we need to continue to push forward on that.
Any final pieces of advice, tips for the audience? And here, think about people who heard your story, are inspired. They've got some sort of burning problem they also want to address. Any final tips, advice?
Yeah, I mean, you can. I don't really share the vitamins NG story because just like there's too much to share typically. But I shared. I guess I shared. Maybe I intuitively knew. I would say it this way: is like there was a problem and I didn't know what was going to happen, right? But like I just took a step forward and tested something out, and then I wanted to get as many data points as I possibly could and formulate the vision. And so, it's not that I just, landed in Nigeria and said, I'm going to sell drugs, yay, like that's not how it happened. I actually, took a lot of time to just kind of, understand the terrain and learn from other people and put this thing in place in a way that, could be, the probability of it being successful was high. And so I think it's just take that first step and then, but build the right foundation so that it's not just a vision or just something that you're just going to get investors to throw, millions of dollars into. Actually create the foundation that can be sustainable so that this is a business you can look back at and say, I did successful, but that it's actually helping people in a way that they can count on and believe in. For time. So that's what I would say.
Vivian, thanks a lot for this. I mean, this has been a super exciting, insightful conversation. Thanks a lot for taking the time to share it from Chicago to Onitsha and sort of standing on trial and persevering through that. It's an amazing story. I wish you and the rest of the team at Medsaf all the best as you expand. We'll be waiting for you in Ghana. So hit us up once you're here.
Thank you. And everyone can be part of the Medsaf journey. Everyone can be part of the Medsaf journey. We exactly. You can invest in Medsaf. You can partner with us. This is not goodbye. So
fantastic.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for coming through. Cheers.
All right. Bye.